the Midwestern kid they couldn't connect with. And by the way, just from my own college experience, one of New Jersey's great exports is college kids. So not only are there college kids at Rutgers, they're all over the place.
Yes.
But that what was the culture shock like for you? I mean, Rutgers is not, say, New York
Sure.
City, but there's obviously a significant difference in the way the world works there.
So, this picture, I'm in a prep school, which is right outside of Detroit, called Cranbrook. If those who saw the 8 Mile movie, you will recognize that, because that was the prep school that Eminem made fun of in his battle, his rap battle, whatever it was. Well, it's all right. We'll take it. I was incredibly fortunate to be able to go to this school, and it provided me incredible lessons and tools to continue on. But it was also a very small school. And I went from this small little prep school to a state school with 30,000 people in New Brunswick, New Jersey. And literally after we had gone for that recruiting trip for the 12 hours that we stayed on campus, we drove back to Michigan. I got everything packed up, and then I went back, and my dad slowed the car down somewhat and then kicked my ass out on exit 9 off the turnpike there and said, good luck. And I was just kind of forced to figure it out both on and off the soccer field. But I was that proverbial fish out of water. This was unlike any experience that I had ever had. Not only was I quiet, for the effect, but I was just trying to figure out what was going on in this crazy place that they called Jersey. And eventually you figure it out. And I like to think of myself as a, adopted Jersey guy. And, and from a soccer perspective, I hit the ground running and didn't look back, and it worked out. But it was such a different type of existence, both from a academic perspective and a lifestyle perspective, to get dropped into New Jersey in what would have been the fall of 1988.
Well, at least you could wear the stonewashed jean jacket. Perfect fit.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, I was knee deep in Bon Jovi, back then. So I fit in that. And, I grew the hair even, much bigger than in this picture. And so I remember the first year I look back at pictures, and I think I even have beads in my hair and crap. I mean, there was all sorts of stuff going on. I wore more jewelry than many of the girls that I was seeing. And, I had stuff going on all over. And again, this was college soccer in the 80s. And so it was kind of a free form Wild West type of landscape where anything went.
So you get to Rutgers, you change positions. I mean, you become a defender because it's the way that you can play. Mm-hmm. And obviously, again, now we're creeping closer to the big success that you have as a national teamer. When was that moment or was there a moment at Rutgers where either you got a phone call, somebody noticed, you get written up somewhere, and you're like, oh, this isn't just my college thing. This is something bigger.
So, you mentioned getting written up. So it goes back, so much goes back to Soccer America. And there's a wonderful story to be told at some point for those that don't know it, and for those that do, because this was such an important, weekly piece of literature. And having your name in it or having your picture in it, it was huge. And so I'll never forget, the first time that I saw my name in Soccer America, and I started to get some recognition. I was, a captain of the team. I was starting every single game. Eventually, I became an All-American. And when you're doing it at Rutgers, again, in this hotbed of soccer that is and was the New York metropolitan area there, and certainly in Jersey, we talk about that meant something. And so you started to gain national recognition. What it did ultimately was give me a platform for national recognition. And I took that to then play in the Olympic team in 1992, and then obviously parlay that into 94. Yeah.
It's interesting because, I mean, you're talking about the hotbed, and I'm thinking about the guys that were your contemporaries that are from Jersey. They didn't stick around, though. They all went down to Virginia. All those guys.
A lot of them were down in Virginia, and, some people ask me, for example, the best player that you ever played with. And I'll throw out a name like Dominic Bucci, all right? And nobody's ever heard of Dominic Bucci, okay? But this was how fertile New Jersey was with talent. And this guy, he ended up having injuries, but the stuff that he could do with the ball, he was so light years ahead of anything that I had ever seen played against or with. And even in the context of some of these contemporaries that you're talking about, whether it's, Tony Meola's and your Harkses and, all the different Tab Ramos, for example, all these different players that came out of New Jersey. This was a guy that will be lost in the sands of time when it
Yeah.
comes to soccer, but that's the type of quality was around, and there was so much quality, to your point, that other colleges out there went and specifically recruited in that area because there was just so much talent.
So you're part of something new in Jersey. I'm wondering, let's go back to Michigan. Let's go back. Your
Mhm.
parents are not sports people.
Yeah.
They're not. I'm going to guess they're not soccer people if they're not sports people. And you chose this game. What was your background? What did you know? What did you not know that you found out maybe even a couple of years later about the wider world of soccer beyond Soccer America?
Yeah, I mean, so again, I look back at this picture and I think about the conversations that I would have with my parents about wanting to play soccer, and this was the one thing that I owned other than music, that was my thing, that I was good at and that I loved, and that I loved above everything else. And where was that going to take me? And just like a classic Hollywood type of scene where they want to encourage you and they want to support you, but they're also realistic. And the numbers aren't great when you're just in general when it comes to be a professional athlete, let alone a soccer player in the United States in the 80s. And so they encouraged me, but also recognized that if I was going to do it, try to use it to your advantage with regards to your education and make sure that you continue to study. I mean, I went back 24, 26 years later to get my degree at Rutgers University. That was how much it meant to me. It's also how much it meant to my parents and how much
Yeah.
I knew it meant to my parents. But that was always part of it. But I think about this kid here, and I was going to try it. And I think a lot of times, and we've talked about this before, I think a lot of things in terms of music, right? And that whole um, do it yourself, or you know fake it till you make it, or just believing in this vision, as far-fetched as it may be.
Yeah.
This was something that I wanted to follow. And even in that picture there, these were things that I was thinking about. I didn't know how I was going to get there, and I didn't know if I was going to get there. And I'm one of the lucky ones, because there are plenty of other people that have a picture just like this
Yeah.
that didn't end up from a soccer perspective in terms of the realizing those dreams. But I love looking at this picture and seeing who I was, but also trying to put myself in that moment of the things that I was dreaming about, the things that I was thinking about, never thinking necessarily that they would ever come true.
Yeah, that's the thing. I'm just struck thinking about being that age or even older, into your 20s, right? You are living in the moment in a way you will never live in the moment again. That you're not thinking about sort of the adult future. You're not thinking about the responsibilities you're going to have. Oh, I got to buy a house. I got to, I'm going to have kids. And not that I got to buy insurance. Like, you're not thinking about that. You're dreaming. Maybe you're thinking about a future, but it's a dream. And you're certainly not wrapped up in sort of what your past is. You're just living your life day to day. That's powerful because I don't know that people can even talk about, like, what were you thinking then? Well, I wasn't thinking. I was just
Right.
doing.
Right. I mean, my day in this a day in the life, and for this kid that I'm looking at right now, would have consisted of goofing off in the back of the row of the class right there, chasing after girls, and for the most part getting the stiff arm, and having to turn around and try again, watching MTV, going to the 7-Eleven and getting my cherry Slurpee, playing hockey, playing soccer, and just kind of growing up in that age that was the 80s. And I look back at it and I'm romantic about it, but I also look back and then I see some of the realities relative to what kids have to go through today. And
Hmm.
while they certainly have more opportunities and pathways, there's also, I think, that's much more fraught with peril. And we were allowed to, I think, be more independent, but there also was a lawlessness or a wildness of the 80s that I sometimes forget, and sometimes people don't realize what it ultimately was from a young age, and you were kind of
Yeah.
just left to your own devices.
Yeah, I mean, even being not quite 10 years younger than you, it was very similar. I think at the time. I'm curious though. You mentioned this prep school. Were you a rich kid, Alexi?
My mom worked for Chrysler, and my dad, like I said, was a professor. I was comfortable in that I never had to worry about eating, But relative to certainly some of my classmates and many of the people that I lived around, no, I don't think I was a rich kid, but I was certainly better off, and I was incredibly fortunate that my parents found a way to. They recognized when I was in sixth grade that this was something that they wanted to do, was to send me to what they felt was the best possible schooling out there. And look, I would have done fine in whatever school it ended up being, but this was a wonderful, wonderful opportunity. If you ever get a chance, if you're out there to visit Cranbrook, it's got an incredible campus, a wonderful history. And as I said, I was really, really fortunate to be able to do it. I don't know, nowadays I have to, accept or announce my privilege and do all that kind of stuff. I was incredibly lucky. I make no bones about it. I was incredibly lucky, and people should be so lucky to be able to go to Cranbrook.
Yeah, I'm not trying to get you to disclose your privilege. I just want to get the context of your
Sure.
early life. And, I think, while now as an adult you can look back and you can say, oh, that's not a big deal. I've talked to people who have been in prep schools and in private academies, that kind of thing, who didn't come from the same level of wealth as their classmates. And that was something they internalized, something they had to deal with. Was that something that this Alexi, thought about at all? I mean, kid gets a card 16. Did you get a card 16? And were you chasing the idea of being like your classmates?
Yeah, I mean, the interesting thing is that I ended up making a life in what would be the most untraditional way for people that kind of went through this prep school door and then to other things. And there's a traditional kind of set out pathway that you go, and it can be incredibly successful and lucrative.
Right.
But I vividly remember they had no idea what to do with somebody who excelled to this extent in a sport. And nowadays it would be completely different, and the recruiting process would be different. I wasn't recruited in the traditional sense, and we didn't have college counselors that could recognize, hey, this is a real asset, and
Right.
maybe if we play this correctly, this kid can get into places that if he was just without the soccer part of it, it wouldn't be able to happen. You got to work with whatever you have, and so that was not part of it. And so in that sense, I took the road less traveled when it came to going to this wonderful school and the opportunities that traditionally it would have afforded me, and I just made the most of it going in a different way.
Well, I've heard there's a mural. Is that at Cranbrook? There's a mural of Alexi Lalas?
There may be. I prefer to call it more of an icon and a place of worship, if you will. But yes, if you do have the opportunity to walk through the incredible campus and you do make your way through, I don't know, a hallway down there, near the gym, you may come across something that has a likeness of yours truly, and avert your eyes to the extent that you can.
Yeah.
I don't ask you to get down on one knee, okay? But you never know, the favor of the gods may
Sure.
be bestowed upon you if and when you were to do something.
Sure. The soccer god speaking through an image of Alexi Lalas at Cranbrook Academy. Looking at this picture and knowing you a little bit, I am curious. I mean, when I saw this picture, I was like, that's a confident kid. Now, it's one moment in time. It's a frozen moment. It's not like this is you all the time. I don't have video footage of you at 17. But have you ever lacked for confidence outside of maybe that first month at Rutgers?
Yeah, I mean, I think we all go through moments. This kid here will have had his moments of behaving like a jerk, and moments of the real world hitting him in the face, and the ability to brush yourself off and to get back up. And whether it's stuff that's happened on the soccer field or stuff that's happened off of the soccer field, I have from a young age believed in myself and kind of banked on myself. And I don't think that that's necessarily, that can be developed, but I think certainly I've had that for a while. But it also doesn't preclude me from, at times making poor decisions, and at times, like I said, being an asshole, at times not getting it right. And, hopefully learning. I tell my kids all the time, you're going to make mistakes, but I just don't want you making the same mistakes over again, because that tells me that you're not learning from those mistakes. And I like to think that I learned from my mistakes, but I made plenty of them, and hell, I still make plenty of mistakes.